In the endless dark of the galaxy, whispers began to spread. No one knew exactly where the first story started, but it traveled fast, jumping from one star system to another like a spark in dry grass. The story was always the same. A new species had been found. They called themselves humans, but to everyone else they were simply the bipeds. And according to the rumors, they were the strangest creatures anyone had ever seen. At first, most aliens laughed. Every new race seemed odd. At the beginning, centuries ago, the reptilian track had been called monsters for shedding their skin in public. The feathered core had been mocked for singing before battle. To the galaxy, strange was nothing new. But soon, the whispers turned into reports, and the reports turned into fear. Because these bipeds were not strange in small ways. They were strange in ways that shook the understanding of life itself. The rumors told of creatures who would jump into freezing water to save others, even if it meant their own death. They told of soldiers who laughed during battle, who shouted jokes, while their ships burned. They told of men and women who could starve for days, then rise with a smile and still keep fighting. Impossible, the elders said. But the younger generations leaned forward, listening closer. They could feel it. The stories were true. In the Great Council of the Confederation, representatives began to argue. A gray-skinned Lauren ambassador slammed his hand on the table. These are lies. No species can act without logic. To throw away one's life for another? Foolishness. But across the chamber, a silent hologram flickered to life. It showed grainy footage from a distant mining colony, a human clinging to a cliff edge with one hand while pulling an alien child to safety with the other. The human's face was covered in blood, yet he smiled, whispered something, and let himself fall into the abyss so the child could live. The chamber fell silent. No one laughed now. Among the fleets and colonies, the stories grew darker. Traders told of humans who could eat poisoned food that killed others instantly and still survive. Pirates cursed them, saying humans were insane because they would fight, bare-handed even against plasma blades. Scientists whispered that humans came from a death world, a planet where storms, predators, and disease wiped out the weak every single day. And somehow the bipeds had not only survived, they had thrived. In the shadows of a spaceport cantina, a group of smugglers traded tales. I saw one with my own eyes, a scaly alien hissed. He was shot in the chest. He fell. I thought he was dead. But then, he stood up again, bleeding, laughing, running straight at the soldier who shot him. No fear, no hesitation. I ran before I could see what happened. His friends leaned closer, wide-eyed, their drinks forgotten. None of them doubted him. By now, the galaxy was no longer dismissing the rumors. They were collecting them. Alien scholars filled entire archives with human behavior reports. They wrote down everything from small curiosities like humans keeping dangerous animals as pets to terrifying facts like humans thriving on worlds where no other race could breathe. And yet, with every new entry, the picture became less clear. Were humans saints or demons? Were they mad or were they simply different? In deep space, on a lonely patrol ship, a young alien officer stared out at the stars. His captain had warned him never to underestimate the bipeds. They are unpredictable, the captain said. They are not like us. We think in lines. They think in storms. The young officer did not understand at first, but after hearing the stories, he began to realize the truth. Humans were not strong because of weapons or numbers. They were strong because no one could ever guess what they would do next, and that unpredictability terrified the galaxy. On distant worlds, mothers frightened their children with human tales. "Sleep now, or the bipeds will come," they whispered. On military outposts, soldiers joked nervously about being assigned near human space. Some hoped for alliance, others prayed for distance. But all agreed on one thing: the bipeds were not normal. The rumors grew until they became something larger, something undeniable. At the heart of the Confederation, a secret meeting was called. Generals, scientists, and leaders gathered in silence. A massive screen lit up, showing hundreds of reports at once. Battles survived, worlds colonized, impossible acts completed by humans. The room was filled with the sound of shifting chairs and uneasy breaths. At last, an elder rose. His voice shook. "We thought them weak, we thought them clumsy, fragile, but they are none of these things. They are strange, so very strange. And it is their strangeness that makes them powerful. For no logic can explain them, no strategy can predict them. The bipeds are the weirdest species alive." And as the words echoed across the chamber, every leader realized the truth. This was no rumor. This was a warning. The first official meeting between humans and the galaxy did not happen on a grand stage or in a shining council hall. It happened far away, on the dusty edge of an abandoned mining colony. A small survey team of the insectoid Vrin had landed, searching for valuable minerals. They expected nothing unusual, just another quiet world with dead rocks and silent skies. But when their scanners flickered and went dark, they realized they were not alone. Out of the ruined colony buildings, shapes began to move. At first, the Vrin thought it was a mistake, perhaps malfunctioning machines. But then they saw them clearly. Tall, two-legged creatures walking upright, faces uncovered, eyes burning with curiosity. They were humans. The survey captain ordered his soldiers to stay back, but the humans did not. Instead of fear, they showed boldness. They walked forward, not hiding, not raising weapons, only watching with strange half-smiles on their faces. The air grew tense. The Vrin soldiers gripped their plasma rifles. Surely the humans knew what those weapons meant. But to the soldiers' shock, the humans kept walking, calm, steady, almost daring them to fire. One Vrin whispered nervously, "Why aren't they afraid?" The captain could not answer. He could only stare. The leader of the humans stepped forward. He was scarred, his uniform torn, yet he carried himself with pride. He raised a hand, not in surrender, but in greeting. The Vrin soldiers exchanged nervous glances. No one in the galaxy raised a hand bare like that. To them it was madness, an open sign of weakness. But for humans it was something else. The human spoke, his voice rough but strong. "We are survivors," he said. "We don't seek war, but we don't fear it either." The words meant little to the Vrin at first, but the tone, the calm, unshaken tone, was what unsettled them. These beings were standing in the shadow of armed rifles, and yet they did not tremble. That was the first encounter, and it left the aliens shaken. Reports of such meetings began to flow back to the Confederation. Each one stranger than the last. A patrol ship of the Feathered Corps once intercepted a human freighter drifting in deep space. The ship's engines had failed, and the oxygen levels were dropping. By all logic, the crew should have been panicking, desperate for survival. But when the Corps boarded, they found the humans singing. Singing. Sitting in the dark, cold air, with death approaching, they lifted their voices together as if mocking the silence. When rescued, one human laughed and said, "If we die loud." The Corps officers left, disturbed, unable to erase the sound of that haunting song. Another story came from the amphibious Rylith. Their scientists had been studying a storm-ridden planet, one filled with acidic rain and violent lightning. No species could live there, or so they believed. But on the surface, they found humans building shelters, laughing as storms crashed around them. When asked why they risked such a world, the humans simply replied, "Because no one else wanted it, and we like a challenge." Challenge. That word became a nightmare to alien scholars. To them, challenge meant danger, something to avoid. To humans, it meant opportunity. And this difference, this strange hunger for hardship, was what set them apart. Still, the galaxy was not convinced. Maybe these were only strange individuals. Maybe not all humans were like this. And so the Great Council sent observers to watch humans more closely. The observers were careful. They studied human soldiers in battle. What they saw shook them. The soldiers joked even while explosions rained down. Some even shouted encouragement to each other, not in calm discipline but in wild laughter. One alien observer whispered. They act as though war is a game, and yet, they win. Others studied human medics. They saw them run into fire to save the wounded, ignoring their own safety. Illogical, the observers wrote. No species should risk one life for another so easily. But humans did it again and again. The strangest reports, however, came from human civilians. Observers watched them share food with strangers, protect the weak, and adopt creatures that would terrify other races. One report told of a human family who kept a beast with fangs longer than a soldier's arm as a pet. When asked why, the humans laughed and said, "Because he's family now." The observers returned with their data. But instead of answers, they brought more questions. How could a species so fragile survive with such reckless habits? How could they throw themselves into danger and still come out alive? The Confederation debated for months. Some argued humans were simply unstable, destined to destroy themselves. Others warned that instability was exactly what made them dangerous. One night, deep inside a council chamber, a nervous delegate asked the question that no one wanted to hear. "What happens," he whispered, "when these bipeds turn their strangeness against us?" The chamber fell silent, because in their hearts, they already knew the answer. For now the galaxy called humans strange, but soon they would call them something else, something far more dangerous. The galaxy thought it had seen everything. Worlds of fire, creatures of metal, empires that stretched across thousands of stars. But nothing prepared them for the impossible things humans could do. Every new encounter with the bipeds brought fresh stories so unbelievable that even the most skeptical alien historians were forced to write them down. It began with survival. Reports came in from planets where no life should exist, worlds with crushing gravity, frozen seas, or poisonous air. Yet humans were there. They adapted, building shelters, making tools, turning death into home. One report, from a frozen world, described humans cutting through solid ice with fire, fishing in waters colder than liquid nitrogen. They should be dead, the alien observer wrote. But they live. Not only live, they thrive. Then came the story of the desert planet Serat. A Vryn expedition had landed, believing no one could endure the heat. But when they arrived, they found humans walking calmly under the burning twin suns. Their skin blistered, their lips cracked, but still they marched carrying heavy packs of supplies. When asked why, one human simply said, "Because someone has to." That answer echoed across the Confederation. What kind of species endured suffering just because it needed to be done? The feats grew stranger. A core battleship once faced disaster when its engines failed near a collapsing star. Panic spread through the crew. They prepared to abandon ship. But then a single human engineer stepped forward. With nothing but scraps of metal and a welding torch, he crawled into the burning engine chamber. For 3 hours he worked in temperatures that should have boiled him alive. When the engines roared back to life, the crew watched in shock as he stumbled out, skin burned, but smiling. His first words were not about pain, but about success. "She'll fly now." The galaxy had no explanation for this. Logic said humans should fail. Logic said they should die. But humans seemed to live in defiance of logic itself. Another report spread like wildfire. The tale of the mountain climb on planet Thrixis. The planet's tallest peak was surrounded by storms so violent that even machines failed to reach the summit. Entire expeditions from other species had vanished there. Yet a group of humans decided to climb it, without machines, without weapons, only ropes and willpower. The storms tore at them, lightning cracked the sky, avalanches buried their camp. Still they kept climbing. Weeks later, they stood at the summit, waving a flag to the clouds below. When asked why, their answer was simple. Because it was there. That phrase, "because it was there," was studied endlessly by alien scholars. What did it mean? To risk death for no reason? To waste effort for nothing? But to humans, it was not nothing. It was everything. Soon, tales of human impossible feats filled the council archives. Soldiers who kept fighting after wounds that should have killed them. Explorers who crossed burning deserts just to map them. Children who played games in storms that terrified grown warriors of other races. But the story that frightened the galaxy most came from the Battle of Kalora. An Alliance fleet was ambushed by pirates. Their ships were trapped, weapons failing, doom certain. And then, one human warship stood alone. Outnumbered 20-1, it charged. No careful retreat, no surrender. The human captain's voice echoed across the comms. "If we burn together." What followed became legend. The human ship darted and weaved, fighting with a fury no one had seen before. It rammed enemy vessels, fired until its cannons melted, and when its engines exploded, it dragged 3 enemy ships into the blast. Against all odds, the pirates retreated, shaken by the madness of it. The human ship was destroyed, but its sacrifice saved the fleet. The survivors of that day carried the memory forever. Some called the humans brave, others called them insane. But all agreed on one thing: no other species would have done what they did. The Confederation archives labeled the event the impossible stand. Scholars studied it for years, trying to understand. But there was no formula, no logic. There was only one answer. It was human. In the quiet halls of the council, a new fear began to grow. If humans could survive what no one else could, if they could win battles no one else dared fight, if they could turn every impossible into done, then what limits did they truly have? No one could answer that question. And that silence was more frightening than any war, for the galaxy was beginning to realize humans were not just strange, they were dangerous. Not because of weapons, not because of numbers, but because they treated the impossible as just another challenge. And if a species like that decided to rise, who could stop them? The galaxy had always believed that power came from numbers, from fleets, or from weapons that could shatter worlds. But after meeting the humans, those beliefs began to crumble. Because the bipeds carried something different, something that no weapon could measure and no empire could control. At first, aliens mocked humans. They called them reckless, unstable, unpredictable. But as stories spread of human survival and impossible feats, the laughter slowly turned into silence, and from silence, into fear. On border worlds, alien commanders gave strict orders: do not provoke humans. They knew that if a human colony was attacked, the response would not be like any other species. Most civilizations negotiated after loss. But humans? They remembered. They carried grudges like fire, waiting for the right moment to unleash it. Entire pirate fleets discovered this truth the hard way. They raided a human outpost, expecting easy prey. Months later, when they had forgotten, the raid human ships arrived, small, outnumbered, yet burning with vengeance. The pirates did not survive. "Do not wake a human's anger," one alien proverb began, "for it will never sleep again." But alongside fear came something else: respect. For as terrifying as humans were in battle, they were also loyal allies. Many species could not understand it. They saw humans risk everything to protect friends who offered little in return. One council record described a human captain who stood between an alien refugee fleet and an invading armada. His ship was alone, his crew exhausted, but he refused to move. When asked why he would sacrifice for strangers, he answered, "Because they needed someone, and we were there." Those words traveled across the stars. For the first time, some began to see that human strangeness was not only dangerous, it was also noble. Still, the unease never faded. In the council chambers, debates grew fierce. Were humans friends or enemies? Could they be trusted? Or would their madness one day consume the galaxy? An insectoid delegate hissed, "They are unpredictable. Today they are your ally, tomorrow your executioner." But a reptilian general shook his head. "No, they are consistent. Consistent in only one thing. If you are their friend, they will fight for you. If you betray them, they will destroy you." And the council realized both statements were true. In the outer colonies, soldiers told stories of humans who fought with terrifying fury. They described human war cries that froze blood, and strategies so wild no computer could predict them. Yet those same humans would share food with their allies, sing songs to lift morale, and mourn every fallen comrade as if family. Fear, respect, both grew together, twisting like vines across the galaxy. One report told of an alien commander who once faced a wounded human warrior on a battlefield. The human was bleeding heavily, unable to stand. By all logic, he should have been defeated. Yet the human raised his weapon, eyes blazing, and whispered, "One more round." The alien commander turned and fled, haunted by that gaze. Later, he admitted to the council, "I could have killed him, but I feared him more in that moment than any army I have ever faced." Whispers spread through marketplaces, through war, councils, through hidden smuggler dens. They all said the same thing. The bipeds are not to be underestimated. The galaxy began to adjust its laws, its diplomacy, even its trade, around this strange new species. Some sought alliances, desperate to have humans as friends. Others avoided them, terrified of what their anger might bring. And some, in secret, plotted ways to destroy them before it was too late. But deep inside, no one truly believed it was possible. Because humans did not fight like others. They did not think like others. And most of all, they did not break like others. A famous scholar once stood before the council and said, "We measure species by their limits, by what they cannot do. But humans have no clear limits. They only ask what if, and then they find an answer." The chamber fell silent at his words, for everyone there had already seen the truth. The galaxy feared humans for the chaos they brought, but respected them for the same reason. And quietly, beneath the fear and respect, another thought began to grow. If these bipeds were still young, still only beginning their reach into the stars, then what would they become when they truly rose? No one wanted to imagine the answer. The Great Council chamber had seen many debates. Wars had been declared within its walls. Peace had been forged there too. But never before had the galaxy gathered for a question like this. Every seat was filled. Every screen flickered with the faces of leaders, generals, and scholars. And all of them wanted to answer one question. What were the humans? The whispers had grown too loud, the reports too many. For years, the galaxy had tried to explain them away, calling them reckless, unstable, insane. But now no one could deny the truth. The bipeds had changed everything. The meeting began with evidence, screens lit up with battle footage, a single, human ship charging against impossible odds, soldiers fighting even after being mortally wounded, colonists surviving storms that swallowed entire cities. Alien leaders leaned forward, their faces pale as they watched humans do the impossible again and again. Then came the testimonies. A reptilian general stood first. "I fought beside them," he said. "I saw them laugh as fire rained down. I saw them bleed, and still they fought. I have commanded armies for 3 centuries, but I tell you this. There is no enemy I fear more than a human with nothing left to lose." Next, a feathered corps diplomat spoke. "I once believed them dangerous. Now I believe them necessary. They are chaos, but chaos that defends. Without them, our fleets would have fallen. With them, we survived. Strange as they are, I would rather have them as allies than as enemies." The chamber buzzed with unease. Some nodded, others hissed in anger. Then from the far corner, an elder rose, an ancient voice from a species older than most empires. His body trembled, but his words were strong. "You all see it, though you fear to admit it. These bipeds are not like us. They are not bound by logic or by fear. They are driven by something we cannot name. Some call it madness, others call it courage. But whatever it is, it makes them unstoppable." The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating. Finally, the presiding counselor spoke. "Then let us settle this. What is our verdict? What are humans to the galaxy?" The chamber erupted. Some shouted monsters, others cried heroes. The arguments grew so loud that the walls themselves seemed to shake. For hours, the galaxy's greatest minds battled with words, trying to cage the uncageable nature of humanity. But in the end, there was no argument strong enough to deny the truth. The counselor stood once more, raising a hand for silence. His voice carried across the chamber, across the stars, across every broadcast in every colony. They are the bipeds, the strangest of all, the weirdest species alive. The words echoed like thunder. Some leaders bowed their heads in respect, others clenched their fists in fear, but none could deny it anymore. Humanity's strangeness was real, their unpredictability was real, and it was this very strangeness that made them powerful. Outside the council, in marketplaces and in military barracks, the news spread like fire. The bipeds, they whispered. The council admitted it. They are the weirdest. They are unlike anyone else. But beneath the whispers ran a deeper truth, one the council had not dared to speak aloud. Humans were not only the weirdest, they were the most dangerous, because no one could predict what they would do next. No one could stop them once they decided to move. And worst of all, humans had only just begun their journey among the stars, on a distant human colony. A child looked up at the night sky, unaware of the council's declaration. "What's out there?" she asked. Her father smiled and said, "Everything, and one day we'll see it all." That single dream, simple and innocent, was what terrified the galaxy most. For every human shared it, and no wall, no fleet, no empire could keep them from chasing it. The galaxy had given its admission. Humans were the weirdest species alive. But in their hearts, every alien knew another admission would one day follow. Not the weirdest, not the strangest, the greatest, and when that day came, the galaxy would never be the same again.